What's up, everybody? Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween!
It's that time of the year again.
The best time of the year. Fuck out of here, Christmas.
Yeah, we had something planned for a while now for Halloween, but I'll be completely honest. We have to say thank you to Aaron, and he's responsible for this year's Halloween episode. He sent us a nice email telling us he was looking forward to seeing what we're going to do this year. And like I said, we had stuff planned, but the thought of actually doing it had never entered our minds. We completely forgot. So thank you, Aaron, for reminding us to actually do our job.
Giving us that little slap on the ass. Ooh.
But yeah, we're going to do some new stuff this year.
But also some old stuff. But not, by old stuff, I don't mean like repeat. I just mean, our usual antics. So yes, there will be an SCP file reading as well as an SCP story at the end of this episode. But first, we've got something new for you guys.
Yeah, I had mentioned something called Gideon's Keys before on the show. Just to explain that to you guys, what these are, and we'll just go with the idea that this is all real. Why not? It's fun, like the SCP stuff. Basically, a spiral notebook that was found at the University of Calgary's library in 2009. And this book is full of, Mikey used the right word earlier when we were talking before we recorded, instructions and locations and directions to obtain magical items, abilities, occult abilities and items and powers. And it's written really cool. It's written with all the places it mentioned being real. They're actual places in Calgary. And we've picked some of our favorites, and we're going to read those. So it's very much like the SCP, but more, I don't know, paranormal and occult-like stuff.
Sadly, the Heart Dungeon is not one of the locations. Missed opportunity, I guess. I mean, they are in Calgary.
I was going to say.
Alberta, Canada.
So we hope you guys enjoy the Gideon's Keys as much as we do. There's a bunch. We'll do more. There's Glasgow Gideon's Keys as well, so we'll eventually get to those. As always, thank you so much for listening to us. We hope you guys have a great and safe Halloween.
No poisoned apples, please.
No, don't do it. Don't even give out shitty candy this year. I think we're in the throes of the last days of Halloween, like people actually participating.
How dare you? How fucking dare you?
It is in my neighborhood, man.
Oh, no way, man. No way. Just a brief little aside before we get in the meat and potatoes here. The city that I live in has every year a citywide Halloween decorating contest. So like people go fucking nuts, man. Like there's this one dude, he won last year and he's probably going to win this year because he set up last year's thing and then improved upon it. But he had this whole stranger thing set up. So like he made this huge, like fucking, it's probably like 10 feet tall and like 15 feet wide mind flare. And then he set up the Fort Byers and had the Christmas light alphabet sign. And then he had the little girl floating in the middle. Like, it's so fucking cool. And then this year he added a Demogorgon and Eddie Munson on his roof fighting a vampire bat. So fucking cool. But yeah, definitely not dying. It's alive and well in my neck of the woods, the way God intended it.
I just remember when those like little spotlights that had lasers that would put like a pumpkin as it rotated.
Yeah.
When those came out, like there was like a write up in the paper of how many people were buying them and how cool decorations were going to be that year. And then like a week after Halloween, there's a write up of how most of those were stolen.
Yeah. And honestly, like that dude I mentioned, all his shit, he makes all his shit. Like he didn't buy any of that. It's all handmade and it's fucking awesome. And I've got like so much respect for the people that are actually making their shit instead of just going to the store and buying some, shit that fucking 100 people have in your neighborhood. You know, and that's why I do all the shit that I do with the skulls and stuff, because, you know, anybody can just buy some shitty skulls and do stuff, you know, throw them in a graveyard and be like, look, I got spooky skulls. No, I want fucking gross rotting skulls. That's what I want. I want skulls that look like they've been flayed. So that's what I do. And no one else has. There's not, you know, every single skull I make is unique. So there's nothing, you know, no one else has that particular decoration. So it's awesome.
Yeah, that's got to be cool to be in an area where people have fun with it.
Yeah, and we get tons of like last year, it was fucking pouring rain for like an hour straight, and we were still getting trick-or-treaters.
Wow.
And my rats were alive at the time, so they were hanging out with me, giving out candy. Kids were coming up, getting candy, and then asking to pet the rats, and it was fucking awesome, man. It was a great time. But anyway, happy Halloween, everybody. I hope you like the Gideon's keys and our usual SCP stuff, and have a safe Halloween, and don't eat too many sweets because you'll get a bellyache, and also don't eat all your kids' candy because that's a dick move.
Yeah, or just be like me and eat your candy while you're on the toilet and just wait for hell to come.
I'm hugging the garbage can in one arm, bearing down on the toilet. I'm ready to go, man. Give me those Snickers.
Who's got the pixie sticks, motherfuckers?
Mateo takes dumps.
Number 3. The clubhouse. During the winter months, the river grows shallower in places. Between this and the ice, in the dead of winter, it's possible to walk across in places where the ice is particularly thick. During these months, when the weather is 30 below or colder, walk to the very end of the street, to the cul-de-sac. Between a large, ill-kept lot and a house from the early 80s, you will find an ill-kept bike path. Though it was once paved, the roots of the trees that line it have rendered the paveway bumpy and impassable for cyclists. Walk to the end of the path and climb down the rainwater outflow at the bottom. Then cross the ice to one of the island-like patches of scrub and small rock. Look for a damaged, dingy little shack made from water-damaged wood and corrugated tin. If you fail to find it, move on to the next pile of rocks, and then the next, until eventually you find the small structure. When you do, hold your hand up to the door. It will either be very cold or very hot to the touch. Neither is truly fortuitous, but you'll be dressed for the cold, so it will be easier to weather. When you step inside the shack, you will find that it is empty, other than a small boy hanged from the roof by a hastily tied noose. His clothing will not be contemporary, rather it will be aged and ragged to the point of enmity, unlike the boy's perfectly preserved body. After a time, his eyes will open, and the temperature will grow more extreme during the hours-long moment you spend looking into those holes. And then they will close. From that moment on, you will not feel the temperature anymore. Any temperatures at all. Nor will you get burns, frostbite, heat stroke, or hypothermia.
Number 13. The Water of Life. Throughout the city, there are little fenced-off buildings with the logo of the city's wastewater department on metal signs in front of them on the door. The buildings are identified by the signs as being anything from water testing buildings to pumping stations. And by and large, this is what they are. However, about a half dozen of these buildings actually contain something else. 4 of these buildings are part of the city's actual water treatment system. They contain pumps that push the city's water through thin grills made from human bone. The calcium from these bone filters is why Calgary's water is often so hard. The filters clean the water not only of contaminants, but of the city's collective sin for its involvement in the oil industry. The other 2 are shacks that contain taps. One of these buildings is where the filters are installed when they're full. The water from the tap passes through all of the filters and emerges brackish and foul. Drinking it, however, is the only way to permanently purify the city's soul. The other building contains a tap that dispenses water so pure that any scars, mutations, cancers, or birth defects will vanish.
Number 199. The Other Mall. Some of the stores in Northland Mall are open at 2 ends, letting customers pass through them while cutting from one side of the mall to the other. Recently, one of the clothing stores that's like this closed up the path by installing a set of changing booths and a cheap plywood wall covered in mirrors, so that the other half of the store could be lent out to another tenant. However, there's something wrong with one of the booths. Enter the 3rd booth from the left, and be sure to bring a sack lunch. Turn around thrice anti-clockwise, and leave the booth. You'll find yourself in the other mall. The other mall looks just the same as a regular mall, except the stores are all wrong. Woolworths, A&A Records, Eaton's, every defunct company from the last 20 years. The products are even weirder. Instead of stocking normal goods, or even normal goods that have gone out of style, the stores stock things that never made it. Product ideas that died on the table. Amidst piles of anatomically correct dolls and surprisingly sharp-edged jewelry, amidst sweaters with 3 sleeves and all the other defective garbage, you can sometimes find a product that should have made it, but didn't. Home cold fusion, the cure for cancer, appliances that never break down. The only problem is getting anything back with you. You don't want to know what they do to shoplifters on the other side. Number 10. The Salon. There is a salon in Inglewood that seems perpetually frozen in the late 70s. The decor, the clothing of the hairdressers, even the equipment and magazines seem to come to a stop around 1978. If you go there during the day, the able stylist will be able to provide you with a deftly executed, if extremely dated haircut for a price that is equally as deflated and out of place. However, if you return during the night, the salon's true area of expertise will become apparent. Entering the shop after sunset, even if you just exited it, will reveal a shocking transformation. As before, the store will be furnished and appointed as though it were the late 70s, but the decades between then and now will now be visible. Everything is aged and cracked, as if it had been left to the elements. Most shocking of all, the bottles of hair product and comb sanitizer have been replaced with row on row of murky jars containing vague, fleshy shapes. One of the stylists will remain, and she will offer you a shave and a haircut. Refuse the shave, lest you be left faceless. Instead, ask the stylist to pick something that suits you and sit in one of the chairs. She will cut off your face with a straight razor. But the process will be strangely bloodless, and you will feel nothing. Your vision will fade to black for a time, and when it returns, one of the faces from the jars will have been seamlessly transplanted. Your features will, in every respect, be identical to whoever the face belonged to before the stylist stole it, and over time, your body will change to resemble theirs as well. If you must vanish, this is how you do it. But be warned that you can never get your face back, and the friends and enemies of the face's owner will mistake you for them forever, 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 forever.
Number 78. The Circus. There are many things underground. The Cannibal Mound Builders Village in Nose Hill Park, Decay's Bookshop, the Black Room, and the circus. The circus is the kind you've only seen in movies or television shows. Animals, clowns, jugglers, trapeze, and a freak show. While these entertainments are benign, broadly speaking, the Midway is fraught with hazard and the potential for great gain. To get to the circus, wait until dusk and close your bedroom door. Say, life just seems so gray at the exact moment the sun crosses the horizon. Open the door and walk through. You will find that your wallet has been replaced with a small bag of washers in different sizes. These are the tokens for the Midway. And broadly speaking, you'll have the same value in tokens as you had in dollars. You will also have a small ticket that admits you to the circus itself. Enjoy it at your leisure. The big top and the freak show are corny, but that hardly diminishes the spectacle of seeing them up close. The games on the Midway are strange, not at all as familiar as the circus. Some of them are quite cruel. Like a booth where you take aim and throw razors at the deadened eyes of other patrons for tokens. Or the booth with the pneumatic cattle stunner. But at the end of the night, you may trade your tokens for prizes. Eternal beauty, genius, musical talent. But if you run out of tokens, you'll find the door back home has closed, and you have nothing to do but join the circus.
Number 5. The Silverware Set. There was an old abandoned house by the Curie Barracks. Something about the architecture, furnishings, and decor suggests grandmotherliness in some vague sense. Through the dirty windows, you will be able to make out that everything is covered by a thick layer of dust. The back door is usually unlocked. Enter it at night, but bring a flashlight with you as the house has not had power in years. Make your way forward through the kitchen and into the house's small dining room. Around the table, you will see 5 mummified corpses, still dressed the same way they were that day in 1992, when a visit to Grandma's took a turn for the worse. On the table will be a wooden tray with a sheet of green velvet laid across it, and across that, the remains of a strange silverware set. The design seems almost nautical, taking inspiration from notch shells and other ocean forms. The tray and the silverware on it will be the only thing in the house untouched by dust. Take a piece and slip it into your pocket. For as long as you carry it, your body will slowly grow more and more decayed and aged, but you will never suffer any of age's debilitating ravages. Number 4. The Funeral Parlor. Most of the city's funeral parlors belong to one company, but a handful of allegedly independent firms survive. In reality, all of the city's funeral parlors are owned by big business in some way or another, including a small, somber brick building in the deep southeast. This particular funeral parlor has allegedly been closed for years, but lights can be seen in the windows at night, giving credence to the story that it's haunted. It isn't. What's going on inside is far stranger. In order to gain admittance, you will have to wear traditional funeral attire, black and subdued, rather than anything flashy or informal. Bringing flowers is said to help. When you're admitted, whatever you do, do not sign the book, or you will find that the exit is barred for you. Instead, offer your condolences to the mourners, who seem to be a collection of people of all ages and races, most of whom are wearing old, worn suits or patched dresses. The funeral repeats itself every night at 8. If you come at any other time, you will be required to wait in the main hall while the staff prepare. During the ceremony itself, never volunteer to speak and never view the body. Both would draw too much of the deceased's attention. Instead, listen with rapt attention to the eulogy, as it is a valued component to the secret history. Leave before the funeral is done, and just like in those old Greek stories, never eat anything anyone offers to you. Item number SCP-106. Object Class Keter. Special Containment Procedures. Revision 11-8. No physical interaction with SCP-106 is allowed at any time. All physical interaction must be approved by no less than a 2/3 vote from the O5 Command. Any such interaction must be undertaken in AR2 maximum security sites after a general non-essential staff evacuation. All staff, research, security, D-class, etc. are to remain at least 60 meters away from the containment cell at all times, except in the event of breach events. SCP-106 is to be contained in a sealed container comprised of lead-lined steel. The container will be sealed within 40 layers of identical material, each layer separated by no less than 36 centimeters of empty space. Support stretched between layers are to be randomly spaced. Container is to remain suspended no less than 60 centimeters from any surface by ELO 2D electromagnetic supports. Secondary containment area is to be comprised of 16 spherical cells, each filled with various fluids, and a random assembly of surfaces and supports. Secondary containment is to be fitted with light systems capable of flooding the entire assembly with no less than 80,000 lumens of light instantly, with no direct human involvement. Both containment areas are to remain under 24-hour surveillance. Any corrosion observed on any containment cell surfaces, staff members, or other site locations within 200 meters of SCP-106 are to be reported to site security immediately. Any objects or personnel lost to SCP-106 are to be deemed missing KIA. No recovery attempts are to be made under any circumstances. Note: continued research and observation have shown that when faced with highly complex random assemblies of structures, SCP-106 can be confused showing a marked delay on entry and exit from said structure. SCP-106 has also shown an aversion to direct, sudden light. This is not manifested in any form of physical damage, but a rapid exit to the pocket dimension, generated on solid surfaces. These observations, along with those of lead aversion and liquid confusion, have reduced the general escape incidence by 43%. The primary cells have also been effective in recovery incidents requiring recall protocol. Observation is ongoing. Description: SCP-106 appears to be an elderly humanoid with a general appearance of advanced decomposition. This appearance may vary, but the rotting quality observed in all forms. SCP-106 is not exceptionally agile and will remain motionless for days at a time, waiting for prey. SCP-106 is also capable of scaling any vertical surface and can remain suspended upside down indefinitely. When attacking, SCP-106 will attempt to incapacitate prey by damaging major organs, muscle groups, or tendons, then pull disabled prey into its pocket dimension. SCP-106 appears to prefer human prey items in the 10 to 25 years of age bracket. SCP-106 causes a corrosion effect in all solid matter it touches, engaging a physical breakdown in materials several seconds after contact. This is observed as rusting, rotting, and cracking of materials, and the creation of a black mucus-like substance similar to the material coating SCP-106. This effect is particularly detrimental to living tissues and is assumed to be a pre-digestion action. Corrosion continues for 6 hours after contact, after which the effect appears to burn out. SCP-106 is capable of passing through solid matter, leaving behind a large patch of its corrosive mucus. SCP-106 is able to vanish inside solid matter, entering what is assumed to be a form of pocket dimension. SCP-106 is then able to exit this dimension from any point connected to the initial entry point. Examples: entering the inner wall of a room and exiting the outer wall. Entering a wall and exiting from the ceiling. It is unknown if this is the point of origin for SCP-106 or a simple layer created by SCP-106. Limited observation of this pocket dimension has shown it to be comprised mostly of halls and rooms, with entry. This activity can continue for days, with some subjected individuals being released for the express purpose of hunting, recapture.
For fuck's sake, where the hell is it?
Agent Wang sighed, rubbing his face through his mask. The night was chill, but all three men were sweating badly. Around them surged horrors, monsters, demons, fantasy beasts, and animate objects, giggling and roaring as they wandered. The three men in gas masks and armored suits looked underdressed, if anything. As they stood, one man suddenly reached out, a gloved fist grabbing a mildly drunk zombie and tugging it close for a few seconds before releasing him back to the surge of humanity, the undead beast cursing and stumbling away.
Fucking Halloween bullshit. We need to seal this whole area.
Agent Drac shook his head, gesturing to the traveling packs of costume revelers. The railcar popped too close to the city. Wasn't even supposed to be on this track. They think the MC&D might have fucked something up. Can't clamp the whole town without major fallout.
And what the hell do they think will happen? The old bastard is out there and we can't even fucking find him!
Wang kicked a discarded wrapper,
glaring through tinted lenses at everyone who didn't have to chase hell for a living. Drac patted the fuming man on the back. "Easy, big fella. Command figures the old man takes a couple people, then does his lazy crocodile thing. It's easier to cover than why a major city had to be quarantined on Halloween." Parks, until now little more than a statue, crackled in with his broken, rusty voice. "How hard is it to find a rotten old man that kills everything it touches?" Wang shook his head, still scanning the crowd.
"He looks like an old man most of the time. He can look however he wants. Normally, we tell people to just follow the screaming. Fat fucking lot of good that does now. Where the hell is our expert?"
A brittle, creaking chuckle rolled over the radio.
Hackett says he's as much as an expert on SCP-106 as a plane crash survivor is an expert on aviation. They won't field lab techs until our initial reveal. We're our own for now.
The three men stood, awash in horrors, looking for one that would put all the rest to shame. The drunk angel wandered on the edge of the fire. Demons, zombies, and pop culture icons swirled around her, moving like a single mass before scattering into small clusters and pairs, only to surge back together again. The bonfire seemed to roar in time with the pounding music, the field chosen for the sudden teen invasion just far enough to avoid noise complaints, but not far enough to attract unwanted adult oversight. Alcohol flowed, people giggled, and the sharp snap of lowered inhibitions and teen angst was thick in the chill air. The night was still young, yet already several pairs had drifted from the comfort of the fire to seek other comforts in the dark private woods ringing the field. The angel glared at the silent trees, taking another pull on an almost empty beer. She drained it, then tossed it down to meet the holocaust of its brothers being slowly kicked and stamped into the soft dirt. She should be there, being held in his arms, kissing a warm mouth. But no. She decided to run with the one boy who seemed to think the moment before a party was the best time to bring up his worries about our relationship. Bastard. The angel, now with lopsided wings, started to wander into those cool, dark trees. Fuck him. If he wanted to toss her aside, fine. But that didn't mean she wouldn't get to have fun still. She giggled a bit, smiling for the first time in a while. Why not have a little fun? Play a trick, get her treat. She laughed, the flush of wicked amusement and booze high in her cheeks. She'd seen one of the boys from her study hall wander back here. Maybe she could find him, get a little better acquainted. She walked in the cooler darkness, the occasional giggle, snip of whisper, or a flash of glow stick the only indication of life. She stumbled over a root, staggering forward and bracing her hand on the slimy tree trunk. She yanked her hand away almost instantly, the gritty, oozing texture making her palm burn, the loss of support almost sending the angel sprawling. She squinted at her hand, making out a smear of gritty, fibrous jelly coating it. The burning getting worse as she noticed the odd pits eaten into the trunk of the tree. The angel shivered, suddenly sober, and very aware of the fact that nobody knew where she was. That she knew of nobody close enough to even call for. She tried to rub her palm against her poofy skirts, not noticing the red and black smear she made on it. Eyes wide and staring, some deep, dim part of her primordial brain ringing in alarm. She started to walk quickly, focusing on the weaving beacon of the bonfire, trying to make herself feel silly to ignore the swelling, unreasoning panic. a twig broke behind her. She froze, a white shade, one hand dripping blood from a corrosive injury she would have been horrified about had she looked. The angel didn't dare look back, but she was too terrified to run, to hear something following, reaching, grabbing. Moments passed, filled with nothing. The angel finally resolving to run right at the moment when a thin, bony hand reached through her costume and into the muscles of her back like a nasty child squishing his hands into a cake. She screamed, or tried to. The sound squelched to little more than a harsh bark by the sheer volume of pain. Limbs suddenly boneless and leaden, nerves dead except for agony. She felt fingers touching her ribs from the inside, even as they were slowly eaten away and corroded. Her body shifting slowly to face the hand's owner. The flicker of the distant fire showed something withered, dark, slimy and pulpy soft, but wiry and strong. Two milky black eyes glistened at her in a too large head, hovering over a frozen corpse grin, teeth thin and chipped. The pinned angel gasped and blubbered, feeling an oily, burning corruption seeping into her body, trying to ignore a slow falling feeling, trying not to feel the ground below her turning mushy and soft, swallowing both figures inch by inch. It leaned closer, and despite the searing horror of that face, some still sane part of her welcomed what was surely an approaching end to her pain. It lingered, however, the other twisted claw of a hand raising as the ground started to swallow her hips. The new touch made the angel lucid with a new fear, her face locking on those rotten eyes. She recognized the shine behind them and started to scream with a new repulsed horror, even as it started to pull both her dress and skin away in sodden ribbons. Jason ran, lungs burning, trying to yell for help between sharp gasps of air. His Batman costume felt like such a joke now, running between streetlights, feeling that warm spot of pee on his pants. Where was everyone? It had been so stupid trying to be the big, brave kids and go out alone. Now he really was alone, and his friends had probably been eaten. He didn't know for sure, but when the boogeyman dropped out of a tree and started shoving kids into a wall that was suddenly like quicksand, it was probably a safe bet. He hadn't even been able to do anything, just watch as those long, bony fingers grabbed his two best friends and just yanked them away, like dolls. Barely screaming before the squishy black wall gulped them up. The boogeyman, it hooked its fingers into David's eyes like Dad had taught him to hold a bowling ball, and Jason was abruptly sick down the front of his costume. The half-digested mass of chocolate looking unsettlingly like the goo that had splattered everywhere while the tall, lanky, naked old man had landed out of the tree. He stopped, stumbling to his knees, coughing and gagging, wailing out a weak scream for help. It drifted off, unheeded. The boy, unable to even sob, too numb with exhaustion and horror. He barely noticed the footsteps until they were nearly on top of him. He looked up, ready to beg whatever adult he saw for help. Then he saw the legs, thin, black. The feet looking pulpy and flat with age, the concrete under them turning cracked and gooey. Jason looked up more, shaking more and more violently. The withered hips, the sticky, soft chest that didn't rise or fall, and finally that nightmare head, looking like some kind of rotten pumpkin, but black and oily as a bucket of tar. The eyes locked on the boys, as shiny and blank as a flashlight in the basement. The teeth parted, some kind of rolling, slimy blackness shifting inside. Jason stumbled back, gasping, trying to scream but unable to even breathe correctly. He stared at the boogeyman as it rolled something in the palm of that thin, beaten hand, pulling it between two bony fingers and lifting it to his mouth. The boy thought it was a candy or something, but then he saw the glint of metal. It was his best friend Anthony's front tooth. It still had the bracket from his braces on it. The boogeyman placed it between his teeth gently, the tooth still white and clean in that filthy, dripping mouth. It seemed to hold it there a moment. Then his jaw bunched and the tooth shivered, then burst like a jawbreaker under a car tire. He chewed it twice, then just stopped, still staring at the boy. It seemed to go on and on. Jason, unsure if he was even breathing anymore, knowing this was the end. This was what happened when you didn't listen, when you went off alone. The boogeyman came and took you, forever and always. But he didn't. He turned, seeming to get ready to take a step, then fell forward slowly, like an old man tripping over a shoe. The black monster almost hit the ground, but just fell through it like it was made of air. Nothing but a black smear left behind on the concrete and the tiny corroded bracket from the tooth. When they found him hours later, he'd gripped it hard enough to embed it in his palm. The boy sat, comforted and miserable. His mother had been nice enough to let him at least wear his Mario costume, but even he had to admit he was probably too sick to walk around the house, let alone outside for hours in the cold. He'd woken up vomiting, and it had just continued. His parents hoping for the best, but finally forced to cancel the trick-or-treating. As sad as he was, they did their best to make it up to him. There was a small bowl of candy for him, with the promise any leftovers would be given to him, and he could watch all the scary movies he liked. He hadn't even wanted to help pass candy out. It was better to just try and ignore things, just pretend everyone else was inside too, and that made it better. He tugged the floppy hat down a bit, trying to convince himself that his tummy wasn't feeling like a hedgehog was rolling around inside. He watched the zombies lurch across the screen, half wishing that the screaming people running for the house were kids from school. He turned up the movie, the slow groans of the walking dead, drowning out the happy shouts of the living outside. The worst was going to be tomorrow, being forced to listen to everyone, watch them eating candy and talking about different houses and adventures. He sighed and swallowed thickly, his stomach doing another slow, oily roll. The boy pushed the candy he'd been nibbling, suddenly sickened even by the smell. A sudden rising shriek from his mother made the boy suddenly bolt upright, his stomach clenching even worse, but now totally forgotten. He couldn't see her from the couch, but he could hear noises, thumping and muffled shouts and some kind of slimy-sounding rustle, like sewage over dry leaves. He stood and started to peer around the short wall blocking the entryway, calling with a hesitant voice, scared of not getting a response, but almost equally so of getting one. He was only a few feet away when the hand whipped around the wall, gripping it tight. It was black-gray and thin, as bony and thin-skinned as grandmother's, with wide, flat nails gripping the paint hard. Where it touched, a black stain was spreading, like grease on a paper bag. The knuckles looking puffy and thick as they flexed, The boy stared, backing up slowly, calling again for his mother, his voice starting to plead. The hand flexed, actually sinking into the wall as that stain spread, and a nightmare peeped around the corner. The head was thick, misshapen, and lumpy, like a poorly made scarecrow. The skin thin and jelly-like. Two hard, glistening eyes the color of maggots stared from above the thin, wide slash of a mouth. Their eyes locked, and the boy felt fear wash from his head down to his feet, his stomach boiling like a forgotten kettle. His nerves screamed to run away, but he couldn't make himself stop watching those eyes, feet moving slowly backwards like a sleepwalker. The hand and face shifted a bit, and there was a wet, heavy dragging noise as his mother was pulled into view. She was dead, or close to it. Moved forward by the hand in her chest like a sock puppet. Bits of her black and pulpy, smears of that black stain eating into her face, her neck, her arms. Her chest was a black jelly-coated hole, the thing's other hand buried in it up to the wrist. The bloodless ruined remains of his mother hanging from it like a rag doll. He screamed, then threw up, little more than a mass of bile and half-digested snacks. Then ran, shrieking up the stairs, begging for his mother, his father, anyone, someone. He slammed into the bathroom, shutting and locking the door, shaking and crying. His dad had gone down the street to visit. He'd be home any second and he'd fix this, somehow. He'd call the cops or something, get them out of the house, leave that black thing far behind. Maybe Mom was just hurt. People could get really hurt and still be fine. He'd only seen her for a few seconds. The thing was just some psycho in a costume. He'd probably run off as soon as he heard someone coming, and it'd be okay then. It'd be fine. He kept whispering this to himself, feet braced on the sink, back against the door. He was still repeating it when the face pushed through the wood above him. He heard the crackle and looked up to see that hellface looking down, inches above his head. The floor under his feet suddenly felt sludgy and soft as he stared, the mouth splitting open to let a tongue as rotten and bloated as a dead fish roll free and down, sliding down onto that horrified face like a syrup, burning even as he felt the legs sinking down and down, unable to even move really as that soft, slimy flesh burned like an acid into his face. Feeling his nose cook down like an overused eraser, screaming just long enough to catch a few feet of that endless tongue in his mouth, gagging hard before the nerves died, starting to pass out as he felt the nightmare tasting his eyes. Drac awoke, feeling like he had been sleeping on a pile of rusty car parts. He sat up, twisting and trying to locate the source of the throbbing pain in his leg. That memories started to flood back, hitting like a freight train, running across town, slamming through a crowd, seeing the withered, crumbling arm laying on the ground, screams, people running, that horrible black face sliding from the ground, eyes locked on his. Parks firing, more screams, a withered hand reaching, gripping, pulling. Oh God, no. He looked around in welling horror, pleading with his own brain to lie to him. The room was dark, dirty, and low-ceilinged. Tufts of dirt and debris in the corners. The grayish paint peeling in ragged streamers, the stained ceiling and floor warped and lumpy. A doorway opened in the darkness, a vague, insistent noise sounding from far off. The light was dim, but didn't seem to come from anywhere. seeming just a weak, omnipresent glow with a slightly green cast like deep ocean water. Drek knew this room, even though he had never been here. At least once very much like it. The old man liked to dump his new catches here before he found them. Drek rose quickly, hunching down to avoid a sagging bulge of ceiling. He barely wanted his shoes touching this place, let alone anything else. He winced, feeling a dull, empty ache in his leg, high on his calf. Probably where it grabbed him. And damned if he was going to check it. He limped a few steps, making sure it could bear weight, eyes sweeping over every surface. He breathed slow, deeply, remembering the file, the brief. Time was subjective. He could have been out for seconds or weeks. It liked to play cat and mouse, tracking through its home or playroom or whatever the fuck it was. Space was endless, but sometimes people got out, or they were released. Keep moving, don't hide, because it was God here, and it would know. He felt panic slithering around the edges of his brain and pushed it down, hard. Face set and grim as he stepped out into the darkness beyond the doorway. The hall was long and broken, like a hospital hallway after an earthquake. No big holes, just twisted and tilted oddly. He creeped down as close to a wall as he could get without touching it, feeling gritty plaster crunching under his feet. The noise was louder, the sound of high-pitched, monotonous crying. It set the teeth on edge, but they'd said it would be like this. The key was to keep moving, keep looking. Yes, it was endless, but if you kept on the move, it seemed like 106 got confused or lost track of things, and you could accidentally wander back into the world. He kept repeating the steps, the briefing in his head like a prayer, ignoring the part where 106 would typically hunt escapees forever. He took a right at the end of the hall, passing down another, then a left, starting to move faster, ignoring the odd corroded twists of pipe and wire in some of the rooms he'd passed, or the suggestive soggy mounds of something. The crying kept getting louder, the high-pitched, gurgling wail of a baby. Ignore it. Keep moving. It called the shots. It could make the whole place sound like a dentist's drill if it wanted. Drek pounded down a hall, nearly at a dead run, trying not to see the growing dampness of the walls, the changing texture of things, broken plaster over old greenish bricks, floor going from broken vinyl to concrete to dirt. He turned a corner too fast, a gooey batch of black, causing his foot to skitter, nearly dropping him to his knees as he clutched the bare, wet brick wall. He looked out in the dim, mossy room, the sound of helpless, angry crying, very, very loud now. He froze, staring half-crouched and clutching the wall. It was standing in the middle of the room, a thick, ankle-deep puddle of black jelly at its feet. The old man was turning, slowly, rocking in slow side-to-side motions. The crying was coming from the thing in its arms. It was a torso, wrapped in masses of what looked like barbed wire. The wire threaded in and out of flesh, some places looking like the bleeding skin had flowed like warm taffy over it. The ragged remains of the limbs twisted and stretched, every movement making the wires dig and tear more. It was hairless, the skin of its bare head and neck looking peeled and rotten, the face a mask of pain. The throat had been opened, carefully, twisted and held with wires. The baby crying was in fact this grown mute torso, mutilated to make that pitiful, helpless wail. The old man was watching him, face turned, eyes locked to the man as he slowly tried to stand upright, ignoring the hissing of his boots, trying not to think of what would have to be done to a throat to make it sound like a baby in agony, or where that pitiful torso's limbs had gone. It watched him, cracked teeth slightly parted, and slowly stopped its rocking. It dropped the wire-bound bundle, arms going limp at its sides as the mass of flesh and pain bounced off the ground, then rested face down in the mossy grime, sending up a new wave of protest between bubbly, sucking breaths. It turned to face him, arms dangling, body wrapped in what looked like some kind of shredded cloth or oozing black fabric. Drac ran, bolting like a scared deer, throwing training and conditioning to the wind in the mad, blind animal panic of escape. He screamed, panted, talked, laughed, anything to drown out the sound of those slow, stuttering steps lurking behind him. He ran and ran and ran, falling and hitting the ground like he'd been hit by a car, gasping and waiting for the end, muscles throbbing. But then they would start again, those soft, rustling footsteps, driving him on and on and on. He didn't know it, but he'd run for 4 days before the old man started taking chunks out of him. Recovery was in the pre-dawn hours, with no sun or moon, and went shockingly smooth, all things considered. SCP-106 was found in the middle of a field, making pumpkins sag and burst by squeezing or stepping on them. The team, one man short, was finally reinforced an hour before they caught it, pushing it back to the recovery chamber, with the big halogen sun guns nearly blinding 2 of the recovery crew in their zeal to have the old man back under lock and key. It sat in the cell without a moment's attempt to try and escape. It sat and did nothing. Head tilted, arms and legs limped. One MTF member stated that it looked sated and was told to shut up in an official capacity. Disappearances were glossed over, murders quieted, and made unnewsworthy. Urban legends seeded and caressed. Overall, it went well once the hell was over. Weeks later, an observation tech made a note in the day's log. SCP-106 was observed to suddenly produce a large handful of small white objects, later identified as teeth and finger bones, and set the pile on the floor. It then sorted these objects in what seemed like random piles, later identified as separated by age of victim. It then stared at these items for several hours, then recollected them. The significance of this was considered unworthy of contemplation.